Nah, that nigga straight. That nigga straight. Be swimming in pussy.
Okay. How did we get here? Because you're not gay.
Because you're not queer. Oh! It rhymed.
3 cheers, because you're not queer.
Yeah. He said, hip, hip, hooray. Nigga, what?
Hip, hip, not gay.
That was good.
Yeah,
that was really good.
Here all night.
2025. Marquise finally,
bag, okay? I'm out
Marquise
here.
finally goes back into the closet.
Embrace your roots.
Be who you are.
For your non-pride. Why are you straight? Why are you straight?
I don't know.
Oh, God. All right. 2024.
All right.
What a way to start off the podcast.
Oh, were we recording? Were we hot?
Always hot.
We're live.
Always hot.
Very much so. He was ready.
Yo, one day, like, you should just do a compilation of all the wild shit that I say.
BTS is it.
And you can release it. It's fine. When I release my, like, I have this whole file to cancel Marquise. So whenever I release that file, you can go ahead and release all the wild shit I've ever said on mic.
And it's all there.
The Armageddon files.
Yeah.
Okay.
Get him out of here.
How Marquise is a white apologist.
Oh,
Is this-
yeah, I remember that. I remember that.
Is this your king?
Yeah.
Is this your king? Good morning to niggas and niggas only.
Good morning to niggers and niggers. It was just a misspell on the mugs. They just didn't get it
Do
right.
you really want a hard ER? I don't know.
2025, the era of the hard ER.
Ooh. Damn, we should start there.
Well, that's it. America reminded us.
Winter's coming, winter came.
Child, it's a
Niggas
couple-
came. All right, okay. All right. Hocus pocus, you gotta focus.
What?
I was in a real quick story.
Go ahead.
I was in a parent-teacher conference, and I learned a lot that day that child's father, who she thought was dead, was actually not her father, because he outed the whole situation on Facebook, and the daughter was freaking out. She was also failing everything. Shit was going left. It was the mom and the aunt for the conference. Mom was cussing everybody out, and the aunt was like, "Hocus pocus, everybody, we gotta focus." And I just cried laughing.
Well, then that's coming
And
with
then
this,
it's-
And now it stays.
now we're here.
Taking that to work.
Okay, right.
I wonder if she ever met her real father. All right, let's go ahead and start the podcast.
I think that's the
People are
perfect
asking me that about.
transition.
And welcome back to another episode of Keeping It a Bean. This is a podcast that brings together commentary, culture, and coffee. I am your host, Marquise Davon. Keese, Marquise, this American Negro. Do not ever call me Mark in your life, because we don't do that over here. You good? Why you cough so loud?
No, you good. Just,
Jocelyn,
just-
It's checking levels. That's all.
yeah, you know, just play with my tea bag. That's all.
Jesus.
Speaking of things. So, welcome back to another episode, and Happy New Year, y'all. I'm so excited to be back. Gang, gang. Woo! And you see, clearly, there are some fun returning guests to this darn podcast this time around. So we're not even going to have to keep it a bean this time. We are going to get mostly right into this conversation. But first, your boy dropped his coffee blend. It is official. Yes. Please make sure that you go buy Leroy's coffee. I'll make
Feed
sure
that caffeine addiction.
Please feed the caffeine addiction as well. I appreciate y'all. Thank you so much. And I'm also selling the Good Morning to Niggas and Niggas Only mugs as well. They are clearly not here on the table because I'm a poor marketer. Thanks, Elijah. So whatever the case might see, and there it goes again. This nigga's
It's cigar.
cigars. That's what it is. Yep. Withdraw.
I haven't even had coffee actually in like 2 weeks.
Oh.
I'm just fucking struggling.
What's going on? Oh, well, yeah, you're recovering. Well, you're recovered.
Recovering is like you gotta give like you can't.
Oh.
Yeah, hold on. So we're actually here to talk about me recovering in 2025.
Welcome to your intervention.
Okay. First letter.
Yeah.
Recover. The hard ER of this episode is recover. JK, this episode is all around transitions and reflecting on 2024 because has been a time. And so honestly, I've been like having this conversation, especially like throughout Christmas break. Different people in their different iterations have been like talking around like, yo, like I hit 30, 34, 35, and I did everything I was supposed to do. and now I don't know where to go from here. And so they're just like, I got a car, I got a wife, I own my home, I partnered, I have a job that I want, I can travel whenever I want, but I don't know what else is happening. But then recently, another magazine, I forget which magazine, it might have been a New Yorker, potentially, whatever, The Atlantic maybe, I don't remember. But they were also talking around how millennials are also just like, oh, we played into the game, but we just don't know what happens after this. So it made me think around like these conversations that I've been having with people around like, I did everything I was supposed to do. I worked hard. I did the thing, but now I am transitioning into my 30s. I'm in my 30s, and what the hell is next? And a lot of people don't have like these, they feel as if these logical next steps aren't there because we're also kind of in a different predicament. Like some of my friends are like, I don't want to have kids. So like having a kid and getting married is not a logical next step. So what do we do from here? Yeah. The things that our parents had to do or our parents' parents had to do, we have a little bit more options than they did. So like, what do you do when you feel like you've reached a different kind of level or you've reached where you wanted to be at economically, and this idea of consistently wanting more, but also being able to appreciate what you have at the same time. So it's been like a weird, like, I feel like millennials are like in this weird existential crisis right now because it's just like, oh, I'm making more money than my family has ever made. Well, not all of us. But a lot of people that I've been around, they're like, yo, we're officially like the breadwinners and I'm making more in my family and I'm now the bread. Like, what does this begin to look like? Because we're like, oh, we got to wait until 40 to hit this or we got to wait till 45 to hit this. Mm-hmm. But we're starting to hit those markers much earlier on. And so I like preface all of that because that's the kind of space I'm hoping that we can kind of like tease out a little bit in terms of like how we've all experienced 2024 and each of us have transitioned into like these new spaces or we're transitioning into spaces and we're also kind of just like, what do I actually want to do? Yeah. So I feel like these conversations have been happening and I know like you two are people that I've had these conversations with on separate occasions, but it's also been kind of like a driving question of like, how do we enter into like this new space and like what steps to take it? So I kind of want to like lean into this conversation, kind of talking around that. And where do we want to start?
I mean, if I can jump right in, I think we are also the generation where we've, every generation I think leans left of where the previous one was, right? Maybe not intentionally, but I feel like it naturally happens, right? And, you know, I think our parents they abided by like, we're going to lean in to this one job. We're going to work here for the rest of our lives. We're going to retire. Mm-hmm. Like that's the route. Right. And I think we've all like in some capacity have had an interest in not really abiding by like the general timelines. I think that's a conversation you see our generation having on a regular basis, like even when we were like 20, right? Mm-hmm. It's like, it's okay if you didn't graduate right away at 21, 22, like we already kind of had that a little bit. Yeah. But now things are like real, right? And so it's a thing of like really having to navigate for ourselves what our own general timelines are. I also think it's like a regional thing, right? Maybe this is something you can attest to, but I think people, like I'm from the DMV, right? Yeah. I see way more often that people, you know, do government contract work or like get a traditional 9-to-5, get some government work, and then they make all this money, and then they're like, well, shit, I actually have no identity now. Like, I'm gonna make travel my identity, or I'm gonna like do this. Whereas like a place like Philadelphia, is like rooted in the entrepreneur, right? It's rooted in that hustle spirit, and so I'm curious, and this is really a conversation that could be had when this episode drops, like in a dialogue for all of the listeners. But I'm curious what these timelines look like based on where you grew up, right? Because like when you come from, I'm as we talk about transitions, I'm wrestling with like moving back to the suburbs, and like it's just a very different headspace that you're in. Mm-hmm. You don't have access to just get out, go hustle. Like if I'm like, fuck, I need $100 like right now, and I live in Philly, I can figure out how to find $100 if I'm living literally day to day. In the burbs, you don't really have that as an option. And so that also impacts your own like personal timelines because you're surrounded by single family homes and yards and other shit, you know? And so like I kind of want to start the conversation off with just where does this like pressure even come from before we even talk about like the transitions that we've all had to navigate into the new year. But like where does that pressure like come from, or how does that pressure even exist in our own lives?
It feels like the kind of like which strings is your life pulling kind of thing. So like I grew up in the DMV too, came from PG County, gorgeous Prince George's. Period. And no me, no us.
Okay.
You do.
All right. Okay. Okay.
I'll leave it there. But like, I feel like I look at a number of folks from back home and it's like, oh yeah, those are all the government folks. They are now director of something and just make ignorant money because like
GS
right,
17, 18,
right,
whatever.
You know,
Yeah.
It just gets you there after a while. And there's a culture that's built from that kind of space. And I came to Philly with that culture. Like, I'm here for 3 years. I'm getting my master's. I'm going home. I'm working for the government, doing the thing. Boom. And so my life changed, of course. Education kind of threw me in a completely different direction. And it felt like, okay, I started pulling a different lever. Instead of it being like career growth, my career was about, well, what does impact look like at my level?
Growth
like,
versus
I'm
impact.
an educator in a classroom. And so day to day, making sure kids are going from A to B, or that we are, doing what we can to support them in all of the big ways that schooling doesn't get to do, but that a good human in place can be, useful in. That became a different focus than what does this path lead to in 5 years. And so from that point, I then became the story of like all of my friends when I would go home for the holidays, and I was just home for my niece's 1-year-old birthday, which that's the era we're in now, right? I spent all my time at 1-year-old birthday parties or 2-year-old parties. Like,
getting fucked up though. Hey, them 2-year-old,
It was literally like the 4 babies in the corner and a chest of rosé.
Yeah,
like, that's what we're here for.
That'd be lit. Hook outside on the patio. Y'all kids stay inside. Y'all play in the basement.
But like everybody else, it was like, oh my God, look at my little niece and my little nephews here and here, and they're like, how are you? And I'm like, well, they didn't turn the lights off yet, so we're gonna call that a win for now, But that's because I chose these other, levers to be like, this is where my focus is, and it feels like where you grew up, where you live, all of those kinds of conversations, I think really shape like what levers feel important or what levers are even options there. Because had I been in DC, I think the pressure would have looked different to be like, oh no, I can't afford, I literally can't afford to stay in this choice. Yeah.
Well, so then, because then the question is, like, again, as we talk about transitions, and this is something that I wrestle with all the time, because all my friends are like finance homies or like weapons and government contract people, and we're all educators, right? Oh yeah. And like, has there been a moment where you've been like, yo, fuck this, fuck trying to save the world, nigga, where's my bread? Like
last week, I swear to God, like my homegirl, she literally used to be the head of like government security for Amazon, like spends half her year in Singapore and running from here to here because that's just the kind of G she is. And like, I'll never forget one day her husband like sent her a job and he was like, babe, the pay is $160. They both just started laughing.
That's
like me on the couch, like
aspirational.
If I could but touch the hem, I'm 160. But like that conversation is really it. Of like, there are just levels to this. My conversation with her this week was literally like, this thing that I've been doing for the last 5 years. It feels like trying to work around what does and doesn't work, figure out a side hustle, figure out a second side hustle.
I'm tired.
I'm tired of not being able to pay the bills. So what does it look like to do what you do? And we talk through resume and changing this. And it's like, oh yeah, you're an educator. You have the experience. Because if you're an educator, you have the experience for anything. And so what does it mean to like change your resume and be ready to like kind of like change who you're operating as in this professional space? So I'm trying to stick it out, y'all. Like, I really, really am. I'm trying to have the faith and trust my path and that the universe has a thing for me. But I'm also like, I have a mortgage. And I have a retired dad and a retired grandmother. And when they need things, that shit stops with me now. And so, like,
that's the other piece. So that's,
I'm ready to sell my soul if it means my people are good. Like,
so I think that's interesting because, like, for me, what we knew growing up was you're either a teacher, a cop, or you work in a factory.
The cop thing, never mind.
But that's all people saw growing up in Reading. So it's just like, oh, it's a factory city. Like, people don't have like these fancy jobs. They don't have like these fancy titles. Like, yeah, we have the community college. We got Alvernia and Albright. But for the most part, jobs there are blue collar. And so people are like, oh, okay, my way of working up is working in this bar or working security, or I'm a GM of this spot. But it's never like in Philly where it felt like there were more options. Like, that's the reason I had to leave. I was like, oh, there's no job here that actually makes sense for me to stay here. I worked for some janky like consultant company for a little bit of time, but I was like, this is not fulfilling me at all. And so you're either working in a nonprofit and social services, or you're going to a factory. And so like, that's what the ceiling was like for Reading. So when I think around like people's timeline in Reading, I went to my 10-year reunion, half the people have kids. And I'm like, dog, we're not even 30 yet. Like, I think that's the thing. Like, when I think about like where I grew up, the timeline is you graduate high school, you do the job that whatever is for you, and then you settle down, you buy your house, and you have a family. Like, Reading is a space where you go down to, it's a tier 3 city, but it feels like a small town. And so I'm like, oh, this is all people know. So unless you leave, my fear was staying in there and just being like, well, I know how to tell people what to do, but like, I don't want to do backbreaking work. I don't want to have to put my body through something working in a factory, because that's what people know. So like, me leaving was for me to be like, oh, Philly now there's also privilege that comes with the title of like going into education. Like, my background is not in education at all. My background's in theater and broadcast journalism. Like, what? And so getting here, I'm like, oh. And honestly, like, when I transitioned from the classroom into the higher ed space, people were like, oh, you said assistant director. I knew you were going to do great things, Marquise. And I'm like, this is dope. But like, for me, I'm like, oh, this feels like to me, a logical next step. But I was reminded when I went home, like, oh, people see me as the person who ran after their dream. They don't see it as like, oh, this is just another job. They're like, no, you found a career. You don't just have a job. You have a career, and you're following your passion, and you're doing this. And so they see me in a different kind of light. Like, I'm gonna always be Marquise, but like, I realize when I go home, it's like, well, we are rooting for you to keep elevating and getting more and more and more. Whereas like, if I would have stayed home, I would have been like, I guess I gotta find a kid. I guess I gotta find a home. Right?
Well, yeah,
like,
I mean, like, there's I think when you leave, and I didn't come straight to Philly, like, I went to Houston first, but I think when you leave, you like redefine what success is for you. Yeah. And we're constantly in a redefining space. And so because of that, it feels like we're constantly in transition, and transition is exhausting. And so then we're just constantly tired, right? Like,
it's like you're always grasping for like, what's next,
yeah.
More,
Instead
more.
of just,
I'm just like,
sometimes it's, you're right.
Like
where I'm at. Yes. And it's hard too, because like, again, I come from the burbs, right? I want a kid. I'm trying to shoot somebody club up. Yeah. Like, I'm trying to shoot somebody club up. So, but it's also like, want my cake and eat it too, which is such a dumbass. Like, nigga, what am I about to do with the cake? I'm gonna eat the fucking cake. But
I think I
don't care. Fuck that. It's stupid.
Yeah, we don't need it.
But what I'm saying is like, I want the cake, and I want to be able to like live this like entrepreneurial lifestyle, right? Yeah. And it's because success was generalized as like the family and all of that for me. And then I moved and saw that I can do all these other things, and also see homies who are like doing that too. And granted, they're probably also equally, significantly more tired, right? Yeah. But I see people who don't work a traditional 9-to-5 and, make a decent amount of money or a sustainable amount of money and like have a child, right? And so it's this weird space where I think like having more traditional expectations and timelines, but then having also been privileged to be able to leave where I'm from and see that there's also these other timelines and expectations and goals and ideas of success. And like, now I'm trying to merge them, and that's what the transition is right now. And that's difficult because like, how do you find the fucking balance to do all the things?
And I realized, like, it doesn't feel, what I realized today, not today, but like over the last week and stuff, I'm like, oh, there's no like.
Side note, trying to shoot somebody's club up, holla at me. No, all right, sorry. We can edit that out.
I was saying, but I realized, I was saying it today, I'm like, I don't think there's necessarily a blueprint for us as we are gaining more options. We can't even sometimes like look at our parents to give us the advice that we may be seeking, because their world is fundamentally different from the world that we're growing up in, right? And so I'm just like, oh, we have to seek out that kind of mentorship or asking those right questions. And you realize, like, everybody's still getting their shit together, but I think about that a lot of, like, I had to make an active decision. I was going to look for a different job and was just like, but am I going to be happy making somebody else's dream come true?
Well, we mentor across. That's community, right?
Yeah.
I look at you and, nigga, I know you be tired, but I look at you like creating and cultivating on your own. I think when we think about mentorship, it's like, it's got to be someone who's like done it and who's up here. And it's like, no, that like you build a real community of people who are doing all the different things. And that's what mentorship looks like, right? I can look at you and be like, damn, that's very aspirational. And like, you may be like, oh, nah, what are you talking about? Like, we're doing this. No, nigga, like, you're doing a lot of shit. You're doing the thing,
Because I'll be
right?
sitting there looking at Sterling. Like I said, when I first got into education, I was like, Sterling, I need a vet because this doesn't make any sense. And he was like, you just go through the things and it's going to be okay. You're going to come out on the other side. These are the things that you just need to know. And here's how you can make money in a smart way.
Yeah.
That's what they told me.
That's what they told me.
Best I got. But no, I think at that point, it's very well taken. I think at this point, my conversations have really been with people here of like, wait, we're grown-ups too. We're allowed to do what the hell we want. So we're going to do the way we want to do it.
Yeah.
And what does it look like to find purpose in that, to find grounding in that? Because I feel like that tug that I've been under for the last 10 years of like, maybe I should have just like been a principal, because I'd have grown in somebody's system, and I'd have been somewhere right now, and you could have Googled my name on somebody's district list or whatever, and I'd have been doing some job, and I'd have been paying bills and like half of our homies who were doing that thing. No shade, no disrespect at all. Like, it's a smart route, right? And I'm clear, like, I had zero desire to do it. So what does it mean to like forego my own passion, my own purpose for stability? And how do you figure out the negotiation at each point where there's like an opportunity provided that maybe gives you a piece of that? And I feel like that conversation is the one that I'm having with people like directly across from me around like, well, how are you figuring that out right now? Or like, what is the next step that you are kind of weighing to figure this out? And giving myself the space to say like, all right, you will figure some of this out. Like, having to sit with time a little bit more while being in the driver's seat has been like something. Like, I still got to pay the bills. I still got to cover these people. I still got to like plan for this thing that's coming in 3 or 6 months that my name is on the top of. And if this thing don't go right, shit really goes wrong. And like, your dream might not be here until the end of this month. And so what does it look like to have been like doing whatever you see me do all of 2024? Like,
no Langston Hughes.
Literally.
No Langston Hughes.
Waiting for these joints that keep getting kicked down the road, or when something, just life comes in front of it. And now that you're the adult, you got to handle the life right now. Like,
the decisions we make are we have to reap what we sow.
And I also think that's like, that's relative to every generation. Like, that's it's not like our parent, like, it's not like, they were doing the exact same shit. Maybe they had, dreams that seemed significantly less accessible, right, for them. But like, they were like, fuck it. The reason they locked in at, working at Ford is like, because it was like, I don't know why I chose Ford. I don't know.
a good American company.
I know.
A good union
I know.
job. No, that was my dad. For Verizon, and like every iteration before that, back to like C&P. Like,
So I gotta ask you guys this, because you guys are talking about stability and stuff like that. Are you guys, I don't know if everyone's
am I stable? No.
No,
Go ahead.
Are you guys thinking about having a big family or a small family?
Nigga, so the crazy thing is nigga, I wanted 5.
I want 3.
So what are you guys thinking about?
If it's a cap.
If
we do,
it's
right here. That's it.
So
Congratulations.
Do you think why is it now that you're thinking, I guess later in your life, instead of like 5, you're thinking like 1 or 2?
I've watched people do it, and I'm like,
politics.
Do you think it's because? Besides that, do you think it's because of the idea of stability for you guys? Is that maybe you saw your, whomever do it with like 3, 4, 5 children? You're like, I don't think that's stable. I don't think they're giving enough attention to this. Or do you think it's more money wise? Like, why one now instead of?
I mean, I definitely I have triplet siblings, right? Like my parents raised 4 kids. And 3 of them at the exact same. Well, I guess technically 4 of them at the exact same fucking time, right? And my parents, like, neither of them had the opportunity to finish their college education. Like, they worked a job and they made the shit happen. And with community, right? Yeah. Like, for anybody who knows me, that's all I'm ever fucking talking about, right? And that's because that's how it happened for me. I just think, I don't know if formal spaces exist to create that level of community in order to raise a large size family in the way that my parents were able to, right?
This is
the village.
Yeah, like if you think
about, I think that's interesting because there was a thing on TikTok today just talking around like people don't want to invest in community in the way that they used to. Like people don't want to be the friends that they are also craving as well. And so it's been interesting because in my mind, I'm like, nah, dog, like I got a dope community. But I also think about like Ray. Like Ray had community out the wazoo. Hey, I want to go to the gym for 45 minutes. Can you watch? Blah, 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 blah. Like whatever. I said, and I think it's also like a class conversation too. Like, can you
I think that's Ray. I think that's there's not systems. There were systems made for that, right?
Yes.
Like as much as we all have our own thing to do about the church, right? You went to the church. There were people that you trusted that you could leave your kids with, right? Ray has been able on his own to like form a large community. You have been able to like build this large community around you, but like there's no spaces or systems that create that. There's no community centers or third spaces for children to go to.
Because I had the Olive is Boys and Girls Club growing up, so like that's how I knew like, oh, there is community that's here, but also like I think I'm also lucky enough to like live in a city like Reading where I'm like, oh no, we literally went across the street to get sugar from our neighbors. But I just don't know if that thing
across the tracks.
Not across the tracks. Stop
across the tracks, yeah. You got sugar from the white folk?
Okay, grab your little lantern and wait for the
This nigga was borrowing sugar from Taylor Swift. That's crazy.
She was across the bridge. You tried it.
Across the tracks.
She was in Wyoming. Okay, very different. Fuck you. But I think about that a lot because like I'm like, in my neighborhood, like I make it a point to be able to know like who am I living around as well. And like my old neighborhood, I had the old heads on the block, I had the niggas on the stoop, I had the lady in the bodega, I had Darren, Mr. Jim, Miss Sheila, Claudie, like they was all there. I'm looking at this new neighborhood, I'm like, oh well actually these are all more people like I had more like the old heads. Now on this block, I got the dudes who are a block down the street. So I was like, oh, I got to like sit down and like talk to them, leaving the bodega and stuff like that. But then she's not far from me. Other friend's not far from me. Another close friend, not close friend, but friend of ours lives across the street from me. So I'm like, oh, there is community here. It's just a matter of like, how are we activating it a lot more? And I don't think a lot of people have the skills to like activate a community. And like, there's like pillars who have to do that. Like we saw that with Love on Wax this weekend. Like we got to see like, oh, this is the community Elijah created. And people are leaving who interacted with you for the first time or at least saw your community in practice for the first time. It was like, how did he get this? Like I'm listening to people talk, be like, yo, this is what I've been looking for. This is what I need. Like I haven't seen this in Philly. Right. And I'm like, that's the piece for me that I realized, like, do we always need like, is it the person who curates those spaces that it's their job now? Or does it feel like it happens interpersonally? Because in my mind, I'm like, no, we have a great community here. But I think that exists within us, if that makes sense.
Choices.
Yeah. And again, it's akin to the location, right? Like, I don't think that level of community would exist in Bucks County versus Philadelphia. Not because of the people that live in Bucks County, just because of, and I know that's why y'all giggling. but
Bucks County is over from Berks County, so I was like,
But what I mean is like.
That's crazy. Not the Hardy R came back.
Hardy R is the theme. Sips tea. I hate both of y'all niggas.
Nothing against
I know. No more listeners.
Right. Marquise goes to 0
Yeah.
on your metrics.
Marquise.
So
It doesn't mark it in. but because of like the access to things, right? And maybe Bucks wasn't the right example, but like that doesn't exist in the same way. It's harder to make that happen. It's harder to make that happen in PG or Montgomery County than it is in Philly. Shit, even comparing like DC, like it's harder to make that happen in DC because it's such a transient city, right? To naturally build that level of community, because every 4 years niggas are moving, than it is here in Philly, right? Or in Baltimore versus DC, is what I'm saying. Like location has something to do with.
Because to me, Philly feels more homish than like.
And people would say that about Baltimore. I wouldn't, because it's a shitty place. But if you know me.
The views are his own. Only.
We in Prince George's County have nothing but love.
That's a lie. No, y'all don't. That's a whole lie. You ain't about to.
We're trying to move forward in community.
And with that, I know why. I know why we're not supposed to like Baltimore, right? It was just too
You
like.
said we.
It was
We're
two
not
thriving
French.
Black communities that they didn't want to interact with, and like didn't build an infrastructure for them to connect. And even though I know that, I still don't fuck with Baltimore. But,
Ignorantly aware.
yeah, that's me.
Yeah, love to see it.
Cheers. Back to the conversation. Sorry, Baltimore.
It's always racism.
Love you guys.
Every time it comes back to white supremacy. Yeah, no, like I appreciate like that line of questioning, but also where like the dialogue went. And I guess like as we are finishing out this conversation, because I like a different couple spaces that we were able to go. As you reflect on your 2024, what are the lessons that you are willing to take into 2025 and put into practice? Because we talked around the idea of like transitions, us honestly not always knowing the answer of like what is going to happen next, because some of us are forging a path that is the first. It may feel like the only. You're like, I don't actually know, who do I run to? I don't know. And so like,
That's good.
thank you.
Yeah, that was clever. Yeah.
The brains be working. But like, where do you go from here? I guess is like the question. Like, take your lesson that you're willing to take into 2025 with you.
I know.
I don't know where I'm going. I think. But what about that is actually new at this point?
Yeah,
like
that's the norm. That's the norm, and
yeah.
that's the shitty part. I don't want that to be the norm. I don't want uncertainty to be my fucking norm.
Yeah. And I feel like if it is what it is in this moment, what does it look like for me to kind of just like safeguard my own sanity, and also feel like I can find space to progress in whatever this like next flip of the coin is going to be. So I guess the lesson that I'm trying to take into this year is really about how do I affirm myself in the fact that all this is going on? Because I feel like my immediate response every time something flips again is like, I'm back at the bottom and I'm looking at all of the people that I'm supposed to be here with and feeling like I'm not. And now I feel like I'm being a disservice to my community and my peers and my village. I can't mentor in that way. I can't show up in the same way. I can't just be with the things, because sometimes that shit just requires the money that needed to go to keep the lights on. And so some of those battles can make it really hard to feel like any of this has any purpose, any of it has any meaning. And for a lot of 2024, I was like, yo, I am just doing shit to survive, and I have no clear sense of direction. I feel like I have no real value in it. I don't feel like I have value as a result. And that shit was really starting to get to me. And I could see that everywhere. My partnership was suffering. My relationships with my friends have been so depleted because trying to survive every day, when do you then have time to show up, right?
Yeah.
And that's a real battle. And I'm super clear that I don't want to operate like that. And so for me coming into another year, I think it's got to be a lot about like, bro, wherever you are, like that's where you are. That doesn't mean anything about your skills, your talent, your purpose, your grounding,
character,
the
like
fact that you
anything.
are on a path.
Yep.
So real.
See the cycles as cycles and not look at every point as a starting point again. Like, oh no, this is just like the next iteration of this madness. And how dare I sit here and be super down, sad, mopey if the people before me could have figured something out. I mean, at this point, being friends with my parents and having the like honor to be friends with my parents at this point in my life, and to understand what they were doing. Every time I talk to my mom, I'm like, girl,
Okay.
you was 25 and had a kid and then had a second one.
The nerve.
The nerve.
The gall.
and still going to try to like get up every day and like function.
Yeah.
Like my car broke down on the highway last week and I was like, well, winter break is over.
We're done.
We're done. What else you want from
We're
me?
stopping right now.
Okay. Meanwhile, she got 2 little children at home. She still got to like get them up for school, go to school herself, go to work herself, take care of a household. Like,
Nigga, how?
Yeah.
so right.
Yeah.
So every time I try to get a little bit down and want to be like in my little sad bag, it's like, hold on. One, so much more is possible than what you're giving yourself credit for.
Okay.
People have figured it out before and are
You
figuring
have
it out.
you
I
have
and
figured it out
so
before.
consequently, like,
Yeah.
how do I continue to like affirm that? So I think coming into 25, it's like, as much as it sucks, it fucking sucks to be so unstable still.
Yeah.
Like I wake up every day and I don't sleep very well anymore. Like now I sleep maybe 4 hours and I'm like,
Hey, same.
Yeah,
terror.
y'all in the same boat tonight. Yeah.
And I'm trying to like find my,
You too?
balance with it. But like in those quiet, dark moments, it's like, all right, hold on, don't freak out. You're gonna figure it out. Do what you got to do. If it's a thug tier day, it's gonna be a thug tier day, and that's just
Valid.
gonna be it too. But like, you're figuring it out. So like, do not lose sight of that in the exact moments that life is trying to make you lose sight of that. Like,
Right.
that's the point. Don't fall for the okie doke.
Yeah.
Damn. Damn. I think last year was a very difficult year for me, and I vowed to allow people to pour into me, allow myself to trust the community that I have created. And I think I did very good at that. I think this year I need to trust myself. I've done a lot. And it's that moment of reflection. It's that opportunity to give yourself grace. It's that, and then the opportunity to trust yourself that you can not only like survive, but like that you can thrive. There's a major transition that's happening for me in like a couple weeks, and I haven't slept in months. Like I'm up at 3 a.m. every day, and I think a lot of it is because I'm not trusting myself to make that transition. And so I think in this year it is giving myself grace and trusting my ability, my capacity, my strengths and my weaknesses. Trusting my weaknesses so that I can also grow from them.
Yeah. Oof.
Ooh, trust yourself.
Okay, because I feel you there. Last year, for me, it was, I had to get comfortable with like disappointing people a little bit more, because I just realized like my capacity for human interaction just was vastly different by September to December, just because like I entered a new space as like a creative of just being like, oh, I am fully an influencer now. Like there are things that are happening. But I realized like so much of it was like me having to like redefine and see what I was like truly passionate about, but also like I had to learn how to trust myself and know like I'm gonna have the right answers, even if I was just like I have no idea. Like, am I selling myself short? Am I not asking for enough money? Do I actually know how to articulate my worth? Because that was something I feel like I lost in the previous year. Was like, do I understand my worth, and is it coming through in the ways in which I needed to now? But I took the chance on myself and was like, cool, I'm doing this podcast. I'm doing this coffee. I'm doing this. The mugs are back. I am able to like do the things I want. But in that, I was like, oh, I'm not showing up in the same ways like for other friends and families that they were used to me showing up. And I really had to like wrestle with like, I have a different capacity now, and and it's changing. And I'm my extroverted ass. I was like, oh, bitch, I'm tired. I don't have it in me to give a conversation. And I had to remind myself like, you're still a good friend, and like you just need to renegotiate boundaries. But I think the hardest part was coming with boundaries for honestly parents. I think that was the hardest part, is like humanizing parents and just being like, this is not serving me in the ways in which I wanted to, and kind of coming to terms with like the relationship is not going to look in the ways in which I want it to, but I'm okay with meeting you where you're at. And I think that part was difficult, of just like, I got to figure out like what this thing looks like with my dad. I got to figure out now, like I had to have like an adult conversation with my mom this morning around like, we need to navigate this conflict with our family. And like, we need to actually talk around things like, yes, you did your best, and we still have shit to work through. And so it's been like really interesting kind of having to enter into 2025 and being like, I'm going to have those difficult and tough conversations, but I'm realizing like it is good to just like name what you're feeling, because the ways I'm reminding myself, don't let my imagination take me to like the worst spot. Because when I just talk, it's much easier.